Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. If you're a returning viewer and visitor, I'd like to say welcome back. And if you're here for the very first time, I'd like to say welcome. My name is James Himm Mitchell. I am both an Oracle card creator and an Oracle card reader. I have been reading cards for the last 25 years. The cards, I always tell people that the cards are my most enduring relationship. I've been reading them, like I said, for the last 25 years, and it is a love affair that never loses its magic. I still love the cards just as I did when I first got into the practice, both personally and then professionally. So at this point on the channel, I have been doing video readings since 2015. When I first started, the video series was then called Your Week in Tarot, and I would just use tarot as the system to offer readings on a weekly basis. And then in 2017, I discovered Lenormand, and then I began exploring and working with different systems. And so with that in mind, I changed the name of the video series from Your Week in Tarot to The Oracle Outlook, and that stuck. So I have been doing that, like I said, since 2017. And yeah, so just thank you for stopping by, and I hope that you enjoy the way that the reading unfolds. Okay, so speaking of that, let's just get right into it. First, I want to acknowledge that I am filming this video on Sunday evening, November the 10th, 2024, and we have all experienced the U.S. presidential election, and so I know there are people who are experiencing a myriad of feelings, and we are processing what it is that we are feeling. So I just want to say that I am holding space for each and every one of you as you are feeling your feelings and working through your process, yes? So with that in mind, I figured, because last week I worked with a tarot deck and playing card deck combination of my own creation called the Mitchell Tarot Playing Cards. And I chose that because the U.S. presidential election was an important event, and for me, tarot can highlight important events. And if I remember correctly, 3 out of the 5 cards that showed up for the reading or turned up for the reading were major arcana cards. So I figured, as we're still moving through the results process in terms of our thinking and our feeling about it, that I would go ahead and work with tarot straight up. So this is a tarot deck that I made because at this point in my card reading practice, I am wanting to focus and specialize my own deck creations. So I made this deck earlier this year, and so the deck that I'm going to be working with is the Mitchell Tarot. This is the second edition of a now series that I am creating. All of them are called the Mitchell Tarot, but in 2021, I made my very first deck. And so a few years later, I decided that I wanted to make another version of it. So this is what I call the AI edition. And so at this point, if you are not keen on decks that use AI-generated work, then this might be your opportunity to kind of click off. And so if you need to go, I honor that. But if you're choosing to stay, I created this deck because earlier in the year I created an angel card deck, and I used AI artwork for that, and it's called the Angel Insights Oracle. If you want to see it, just let me know in the comments, and I'll either do a reading or do a video where you get to see all the cards. I was very, very pleased with how the deck turned out. During the creation process, I subscribed to a platform where you can create what they call text-to-image generated artwork. So I did that. But because I paid for a year subscription and the deck was done, at this point I said, I want to get my money's worth. So that is where the inspiration for the tarot deck came in, because I said, I wonder what the Mitchell Tarot would look like if I used AI artwork. So this is the result. I'm very pleased and happy with it. It is not available on my Make Playing Cards marketplace site for the simple reason is I know that using AI artwork, specifically in tarot decks and oracle card decks, can be a hot button issue or topic. So I have not offered it for that reason. But I guess if along the way enough people express interest in it, I could easily just put it up on the site. So I have the deck on hand right here. And I always like to show the card backs. So these are the card backs. This is what the backs look like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the cards. I'm going to start by shuffling on camera so you all can see that the cards are indeed being shuffled. And whenever I do these weekly readings, these general readings for the collective, I always keep in mind the question is what insight, information, guidance is going to be most helpful and beneficial. Did you see that a card fell out? So I have it, it landed right on the table, so we're going to include that as maybe an extra card because I was talking about the intention, yeah? So what's going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through this upcoming week? Do it this way as well. Okay, so now because I have the table next to me, I'm going to go ahead and shuffle so you won't see it, but you will definitely hear it, I'm sure. So I'm shuffling the cards 5 times because, as I've said in previous videos, I work with the elements in my spiritual practice. So each shuffle is going to be for one of the elements. So the first one was for earth. This is going to be for air, fire, water, and then the last element is spirit. All right. And now I have the card shuffled. I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. I'm going to take a moment to spread the cards out. And I'm going to pick 5 cards this week. I usually work with 3 to 5 cards. So now I'm just looking through the fan and looking for cards that are getting my attention. All right, so I have the cards selected. And I have them face down. And the way it works is that I only turn them over one at a time. So I will see them when you see them. Okay, so now I have the card here that fell out. So now this is going to be an extra card. We call those, for those who work with cards on a frequent or regular basis, we call those jumpers. So I'm going to start with the jumper card. And so here we have, okay, so I'm going to hold the card up. So here we have the Temperance card. So now if you remember, last week the Temperance card also showed up. And so when Temperance comes up, this is a card about, it can be about patience. Like I said last week, I'll just use some of the words I said last week as a jumping off point. So talked about patience and moderation. This is a card about balance. But it can also be a card that represents healing. So for some of us, we are still in that healing process, right? We may be working on regaining our equilibrium, right? We may have been thrown off balance, right? I talked about balance with this card. So it could just be a matter of what we need to do to kind of get our balance back, get our equilibrium back. This card is also, again, like I said, about healing. So there may be, again, like the 4 of Spades opened up the reading last week. So there may be some healing that's still needing to take place, that kind of thing. It is a major arcana card, so that suggests some importance because there are 2 kinds of arcana in the deck. For those who are familiar, you will know that there are minor arcana cards and major arcana cards. If you're new to tarot, the minor arcana cards talk about the more mundane sides of life, and then the major arcana cards like Temperance highlight important issues or events, or how we are needing to learn a major lesson from those events, right? So with that in mind, this is a card about experiences with people of different ethnicities, different races, different religions, and so I know that is playing a huge part into how people are processing their thoughts and feelings about the results of the election, because it centers on different groups of people, right? And so, with that in mind, sometimes this card can be about trying to attain some sense of compromise. Okay, so now you will note on the card, the image, this is a card that has an angel as the image. So I am an angel person, so I will just kind of offer a few different types of angels. If you are working with angelic energy, this might be of help. So the first one is Archangel Michael, who is the chief angel of protection, right? So it could just be a matter of people either thinking or feeling, or a combination of both, the need to protect themselves in some ways. Or there may be some people who are feeling galvanized to protect those groups of people that I mentioned just a moment ago, right? Again, with the idea of Archangel Michael being the chief protection angel. The other thing that I know Archangel Michael to be about is this need to, and it may be as a result of protecting ourselves, right? Needing to sever or disconnect energetic attachments to either situations or people, right? So it could just be a message that who do we need to kind of detach ourselves from, energetically speaking. And Archangel Michael is good for a process that's known as cutting the cords, right? So it could just be a matter of, from a more energetic perspective, who do we need to sever connections to, right? And so that's one angel. The other angel, or second angel I should say, is our guardian angel. So if you're an angel person, this card would come up to say that you are being watched over and protected by your guardian angel, or you could call on your guardian angel to assist you in keeping you safe, right? And that's a word that would mean different things to different people. So maybe considering the idea of what does safety mean to you, and then working with your guardian angel first and foremost, because they're the angels who are divinely assigned to you, right? And then Archangel Michael being the kind of chief and head guardian angel, right? Working with your guardian angels as well, right? So that's the second one. The other angel that I associate with this card is the Archangel Cassiel. So Cassiel is actually known as the angel of temperance and the angel of tears, right? So Cassiel astrologically is associated with the planet Saturn, right? So I came in contact with Cassiel when I was experiencing a Reiki treatment, and Cassiel came in as a visitation during that experience and offered me his name. I'm going to say him because when I saw Cassiel, he looked male and he had red hair, right? Told me his name was Cassiel. I had never heard the name. I got home, Googled it, and sure enough, there was an angel named Cassiel. So like I said, so Cassiel is the angel of temperance and the angel of tears. And Cassiel is known to be a watcher. So what does that mean? That means Cassiel observes events, right? So it could just be a matter of, as I said earlier, if you are in your thoughts and feelings regarding the results of last week's presidential election, then this is just a way of observing those thoughts and observing those feelings, right? Non-judgmentally, I will add that part. Non-judgmentally, meaning like feel your feelings without thinking a certain way about why are you thinking like this or why are you feeling this way, that kind of thing. Just let it be a part of your process of cleansing, right? And clearing and healing, right? So Cassiel is about that. Now, I mentioned Saturn for a particular reason. Saturn in astrology, and I'm going to put my disclaimer here that I am not deep into astrology, meaning like it's not my wheelhouse. Like I am not as in depth with that as I am, let's say, card reading. Okay, so I know enough to make me dangerous. Yeah, so let's just go with that. So Saturn is the planet that is said to be like the teacher or the taskmaster, if I can get the word out. And it's all about discipline, right? So it's about, like, learning through the more challenging life experiences, yeah? So that's a lot to say about this one card, but it was the jumper card, so it came out for a reason. So just think about some of those thoughts or aspects of this card. Okay, so now with that said, let's now move into the 5 cards that I have laid out on the table. So now, opening the line up, we have, okay, so here we have the 9 of Earth. So I love that this card came on the heels of what I was talking about with the planet Saturn in terms of teaching. One of my meanings for the 9 of Earth is that it is a card that talks about teaching, training, or instruction or guidance. And that comes from the idea that the woman pictured in the image has a falcon on her arm. So I always think about like training the falcon, right? So in the bigger sense, that can just represent training, instruction, guidance, that kind of thing. So this card would suggest, coming on the heels of Temperance, that this is about downtime. So it's about, like, finding time to be alone, to be by yourself, that kind of thing. It's also a card that can talk about self-sufficiency and independence. So it could just be for some people, as we open up the week, that you are thinking more inclines or in terms of what can you do for your own sense of independence in terms of your material existence, because the suit of Earth represents the tangible and material side of life, right? So it could just be a matter of what do you need to do to better take care of yourself to some degree, because it represents, again, self-sufficiency and independence. So there is that thought. I'm taking a pause to ask what else do I want to say about this card. Yeah, so the other thing here could be about your value system, right? Because the suit of Earth can represent what we place value on in the material world, but it can also be about your own sense of value and your own sense of worth, right? So I'm hearing in my mind the old tagline for the L'Oreal commercials, like, because I'm worth it, that kind of thing. So it could just be a matter of people are maybe thinking about or moving towards a greater sense of independence, and they realize, because if the world is not going to validate their sense of worth and value, that they realize that this is a job they need to take on for themselves. Yeah? So that's what I'm going to say about the 9 of Earth. Next card. Ooh, okay. So the image might jar people, and it's one of those things where I want to say sorry, not sorry, kind of thing. But it is a major arcana card, so I call this card 13. If you are tarot fluent and knowledgeable in tarot, then you will know that this is known as the Death card. But my deck kind of is a hybrid between the Rider-Waite system of tarot and the Tarot de Marseille system. And in the Tarot de Marseille system, the Death card is just number 13, right? So I'm going to call it card 13. So card 13, as I said, is a major arcana card. So now we had Temperance first, and now we have this card. This card, its chief message is about undergoing a profound sense of change, right? And I will say, and this is just coming right off the heels of last week, that there may be a sense of fear and trepidation about the changes that are going to be taking place over the course of the transition. I'm saying this too. Death is not, or 13 is not just about change, but it's also a card that talks about transitions, right? So I'm thinking in my mind that, the fear of change that is going to come as a result of the transition, and I'm talking about the transition of one president to the next, right? So it could just be a matter of, for some of us, gearing ourselves up, getting ourselves ready for the changes ahead, and then some of us having to deal with the unknown aspect, right? Because change carries with it the element of the unknown, yeah? So it could just be a matter of dealing with the fear of the unknown in terms of the changes that could take place as we move closer to the transition of presidents. Right? So I'm asking, what else do I need to say about this card? Yeah. So for some people, if I don't make it about the results, and those of us who are processing the results of the election, then this can be about feeling the need to end something, to complete something so you can move on. Because the 13 card is also about endings and completions. It can talk about the natural conclusion or completion of a cycle or a chapter, right? Now for some people, because there's a skeleton on the card, right, a skeletal figure, so this card can be about, paring things down. I call it the getting down to the bare bones. So somebody could be, or some people even, could be going through a minimalist stage, kind of just keeping things to a bare minimum, yeah? Or it could be that people are in a stage where they are, they have the bones, quote unquote, the bones of a project or a plan or something of that nature, and now's the time to kind of flesh that out, right? That kind of thing. So there's two different ways of looking at that. One could be about paring down, the other could be about this idea of, metaphorically speaking, about fleshing something out, right? So now I'm seeing this, and I'm just going to put this out there. So now, sometimes for me, this card, the Nine of Earth, can be about financial self-sufficiency or financial independence. And then this card coming after it, it's making me feel like maybe somebody who works for themselves may have to kind of pare down or reduce either something having to do with products, services, or even employees, because I'm seeing the idea of like a skeleton crew, right? So somebody may be minimizing something down to the bare minimum, but it may be in terms of human capital, meaning like the people who work on the job. I'm just putting that there because that just came to me. So my role is always to say what I get, that kind of thing. It makes me feel like in my job, I work 2 jobs out in the world. So one of my 2 jobs, and I was just thinking about this, is that one of my jobs deals with a lot of turnover, right? So people come and go constantly, right? And it's very rare where we have people who stay on very long term. Yours truly excluded from that because I've been with the job a very long time. So I've seen a lot of people come and go. But I was just thinking about that in terms of turnover. But I'm seeing that where, so people may quit, leave, may be terminated. I've experienced a lot of that within a short amount of time recently on the job. So I'm just putting that out there too, right? Sometimes I get this card and it makes me feel like something's being terminated, and as a result of that, there's an expression called heads will roll, right? If you've heard of that, it's like heads roll, meaning like there's going to be a succession of people exiting a particular situation or experience. So I'm seeing all of that. So that is 13. Next card. Now, usually for me, the third card is usually like the heart of the matter or the focus or the central issue of the entire line, because it's the midpoint of the line. So here we have Page of Water. So in my deck, the suit of water is the suit of cups. It's the suit that rules feelings and emotions. So now, coming on this, so now read the order of the cards, right? I just said something being ended, something being completed, that kind of thing. And then this card would be about somebody's making a change, and that could be like change in jobs or something of that nature, but especially in jobs in the working world. So I'm going to stick with that as a scenario. So if somebody's making a job in terms of employment, this 13 card would be making your exit, right? Ending that, terminating that, completing that. And then the Page of Water on the heels of that is about making a great first impression. So maybe thinking like somebody's changing jobs, right? Or if you're finding yourself suddenly out of work unexpectedly, maybe even, then this card is about like as you kind of get out there and start looking for your next gig, this card is about making a great first impression, right? So there's that. The other thing I want to say in terms of the bigger issue or bigger experience is again, the results of the presidential election, then this card is about feeling your feelings, right? The Page of Water is known as the highly sensitive person, right? So it could just be a matter of, again, like being at the center of the line, being a place where you are allowing yourself, being open and receptive to your feelings and processing them, right? And for some people, this might be a new experience. The pages in tarot always talk about the beginning stage, the learning stage of development. So some of us may be learning how to deal with emotions, especially if we feel like we haven't really felt those types of feelings before, that kind of thing. So there is that. Now, I talked earlier about issues with people, right? And I mentioned a few different groups of people. The Page of Water, in that regard, could be about young people, because pages in tarot usually represent children or those people who are still in their formative years of development, yeah? So it could just be a matter of there are people who are concerned about young people, people who are coming up in the world, or the results of the election having an impact or effect on younger people, that kind of thing, right? But my first impression to go with this is really about, honoring where you're at on the emotional spectrum, right? So that's what I want to say about the Page of Water. Okay, next card. Here we have another page. So here we have the Page of Earth, right? So same thing. So now we have two pages back to back. That's a theme or a pattern. So there's something about learning something new, being at a learning stage of development, that kind of thing, or something having to do with younger people, right? So the Page of Earth, and so now we have two cards from the suit of Earth too, right? But the Page of Earth is the student, right? So it may be as you are feeling your feelings and processing your experience, right? Then this card could be about, like, what's the lesson behind that? What are you learning? What have you learned as a result of going through this, right? Order of the cards, right? So that's what I would offer here. It may galvanize people to learn more, to become more knowledgeable, educated, because the Page of Earth, if you see, has a book. So this is about, again, being the student, but being, maybe studying up on something, reading up on something, making yourself more aware. It could be about educating yourself, yeah? Where I talked about here with the very first card opening the line up, aside from the Temperance card, right? So I said this is about training, instruction, teaching, and then here we have the student card, right? So there's something to be learned, or there's something to that we may learn more about as this week unfolds. And that could be in the bigger sense with the U.S. presidential election, right? Some more things in terms of information may come to light, or it could just be a matter of just for ourselves as we are exploring our thoughts, our mental landscape, and our feeling nature and our feeling centers. What are we learning about ourselves in terms of the process? What is the process teaching us about ourselves? And maybe about how we are looking at the world around us, yeah? It could be a matter of, since the Earth suit represents the physical material world, what are we learning about the physical world? What is the world teaching us that maybe we wouldn't have learned any other way? So now I will offer this, and this is for my more intuitive-minded people. We have two cards. I'm going to put my face over here on this side. We have two cards here that are talking about our intuitive development. The Page of Water is for those who may consider themselves to be sensitives, right? And so that's people who are intuitive, psychic, those kinds of things, right? So it could just be a matter of you may be intuiting information, you may be getting intuitive impressions, intuitive insights, that kind of thing. And then this card here, the Page of Earth, is really about being a reader. So you fellow card readers out there, it may be that you are getting information or intuiting information from the cards. And I already know I've been checking out lots of different commentary and perspectives right here on YouTube regarding the results of the election. And one of the things that I noticed or came upon is a lot of card readers explaining their process in terms of how they came to the results that they did regarding their readings that they did with the U.S. presidential election. And maybe they're doing follow-up readings on the results and what they might see going forward. So I'm seeing that as a possibility here. So for those of you who may be watching other card readers, you may see a lot of that over the course of the week, right? But I'm going to also suggest for maybe those who may be discovering that they have an intuitive knack or talent or ability, it may be with the Page of Earth learning more about how to work with that. It could literally be with the book about journaling your process, yeah? It could be a matter of, if you are a card reader, maybe you are just starting out, right? Pages are at the learning stage of development. Then it's about maybe recording your readings, right? Keeping a record or a documentation, so this way you can go back and revisit those readings to see how they turned out, right? Especially if you are looking at events taking place out in the world. You may want to document those and come back and check your results. So I'm seeing that with these two cards in terms of intuitive development and card reading, or being readers. Okay, so then the last card is, okay, so here we have another major arcana card ending the line, and it is the Lovers card. It is another major arcana card, as I said. So we had Temperance, we had 13, and now we have the Lovers. So now the Lovers can be about relationships, right? That's usually what people kind of just present as the first obvious meaning of the card. But the Lovers card is really all about being at a major crossroads in life and needing to make a major life choice or decision, right? Because in the Tarot de Marseille Lovers card, it's actually called the Lover. But in the image, it is a man who has two women on his sides, and he has to make a choice. So back in the day, it was called the choice. Yeah. So I'm really focusing more on that. So at the end of the line, we may find ourselves, you know, as the week progresses or even maybe wraps up, you may find yourself, or we may find ourselves, being at a major crossroads and needing to make an important life choice or decision, right? So now, if that is the case, then this card talks about, you know, going in with your heart and your mind. You have to have both, right? I talked with Temperance about balance. The Lovers card is also about balance, right? So it's about your mind and your heart, and making sure that your mind and your heart are in alignment, meaning the way I'm thinking about the experience and the way I'm feeling about it are in alignment, so you can make the best choice possible, right? Now, it could also be, too, people are going to be forming important and significant relationships, and I have the hands of the people being prominent here, yeah? So that could be agreements, commitments, things like that. It could also be like people forming relationships where they're going to go hand in hand, right? I've seen people working on unifying something, or I'm seeing the word unification in my head. So people working on coming to places of greater sense of unity, right? And it could be with people in their own communities, right? I talked about different groups of people before. So maybe people in their own communities kind of like making significant bonds or connections or relationships. And maybe even with Temperance being a card of compromise. I'm going to hold the card up again. Compromise, it could just be a matter of working with people to come up with some kind of compromise, and that would be a situation that is mutually beneficial for everyone involved. So if there's two people, each person is getting something of value or something of benefit from that exchange or connection, yeah? So I'm seeing that. Now, interestingly enough, the Temperance card I talked about was Archangel Michael, or your guardian angel, or Archangel Cassiel. This is another angelic presence on this card, and this is Archangel Raphael. Raphael in angelology is known as a chief healing angel. So I find it very interesting that the card that jumped out was a card about healing, and now we end the line with another card that talks about healing. So again, if you are in a state of emotional process, you could call upon Archangel Raphael if you work with angelic energy to assist you in healing those emotional states, or helping you move through your emotions and your feelings, right? To come to a greater place of wholeness, right? So that's what I want to say about the Lovers. I'm just taking a pause to see what else I want to say. Yeah, so that's it. I'm going to just sum up again this card. So really it's about forming important or significant relationships, commitments, agreements, yeah? But the more important impression I'm getting of this card is being at a stage where we're at a crossroads in life and needing to make important life choices and decisions. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook. So if you hung out with me throughout this video and you are still here with me as I conclude, I want to thank you for giving me the gift of your time. I hope there were aspects of the reading that resonated with you, and if there were, maybe you could just drop me a comment in the comment section below and let me know. I would love to hear from you. I'm going to be holding space for us as we move through this week. I'm going to be thinking about each and every one of you as I am still processing things myself. I will be thinking, as I'm doing my own process, I will be thinking about each and every one of you as you are doing your own process work. So until we meet again in our next video reading, this is James and Mitchell signing out. I hope that as we are all moving through our thoughts and feelings, that we are gentle with ourselves and we are taking care of ourselves and we are being good to ourselves, yeah? So until next week, take care and be well.